welcome to the sixth edition of Cognitive Dissidents, our monthly roundtable. I'm Hrvoje from Geopolitics Empire.
I'm Monica Perez from the Monica Perez Show.
And I'm Parallel Mike from the Parallel Mike podcast and Parallel Systems broadcast.
All right, this transmission, this recording was delayed a bit because Monica's house almost burned down. In fact, it's the last house standing. I'm glad your house didn't burn down. Monica, tell us what is going on.
Hi, guys. Well, it's not the very last house standing, but it's basically the last house standing. We have a little, if you can see a map, it's Cal Fire if you just Googled Cal Fire, it comes up with a map that's pretty accurate down to like the two houses across the street from me did not burn, and like 2 on one side and 4 on the other, and then a few behind each. So I'm just like nestled in this little pearl. And then you see the rest is just yellow, which is destruction. I have pictures of that. I'm not exaggerating. It's just ash. And so I don't even know where to begin because so it's Friday. I sent you some stuff, Hrvoje, and maybe we start with the last thing I sent you, which is a picture with a dog in it. And then another picture. These are 2 pictures taken from the same spot within 24 hours, no filters. That's the wrong. Oh,
can you see?
Yeah, that's the wrong one. Did you go to the other one? I sent you a second email or a third email.
There's a bunch of. Can you see the photos?
Yes, definitely.
So
you go to the email I sent you after that. It says like. I don't know what it says.
I don't have a.
Maybe whilst we're doing that, Monica, you
don't
could
worry about it. Yeah.
Maybe whilst Hrvoje's having
sure.
a quick look, you could take us back to the very beginning. Yeah. Like, when did you first realize?
Oh, okay. So actually, I'm having. I had a lot of like videos and photos that I couldn't go through yet, but this is what happened. So Tuesday, I did a show Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. Pacific, which is when I normally do a live show. I said, they're going to cut our power off. So let me just get this out here. I just read, it was a book reading. And so it ended at 3. At 3:39, and it was kind of weird because it was a coincidence there. 3:39, they cut the power. So they cut the power so fires don't start. And it was kind of annoying. My husband and son were preparing to drive across country the next day to take my son back to school. And we were just like, what are we going to do? Should we get a hotel room? Because it's going to, we're going to have no power for 2 days. We decided to go out to dinner and come home and like figure out what to do. And when we came home, by the time we got home, a huge fire had started in the canyon 1 mile from our house. And our house is 100 years old. A lot of the houses were really old like that. Little houses, big houses. It's just an old, was where people who serve at Pasadena was a kind of back in the day where people had their country houses. And then Altadena was where the people who served them lived. So they're old, small houses and big houses now, everything. So everybody there knew like the fires never got down to our street. So we weren't super worried about it, even though we could see it. We weren't super worried about it. And there was an evacuation order or warning. And we were like, let's just keep an eye on this. So we were watching. And it's just like, then we couldn't see it anymore. We thought, well, it's gone. We went to sleep. And, but I was with my adult son, 19-year-old son, and my husband and my other son who has Down syndrome. So I didn't feel like I was the alpha. I wasn't sleeping with one ear open, but they were, and you could hear booms. I don't know what the booms were, but I was like, I'm not in charge here. I'm getting some sleep. About 3:30 in the morning, I think it was like 3:39 exactly. I remember that just weird coincidence. My husband looked out the window. He heard a boom, and he looked out the window and he said, "There's fiery embers raining down on our backyard. We have to go." So we had prepared everything in case we had to leave. So it was all in a pile, but we had 3 bunnies and this dog, really difficult dog we just adopted. And my son has Down syndrome. So we were not leaving in a hurry. So we had to go, and we had to go fast. And that's when it was. We went outside. The sky was orange and it was super smoky, and it was a bit scary. So my husband got a hotel, and I brought the bunnies to a friend, And then I went, so we're all sharing a hotel room. So people are coming in that right now. So I went, I delivered the bunnies to a friend and we got a dog friendly place and we're all sitting there watching TV. We hadn't slept at all, obviously since 3:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm watching the news and the woman is on the corner, on my street, on my cross street. So I'm looking and she's showing the street sign and I'm like, now this is the first time I'm really telling this story. So I'm going to try to keep it together, but it was crazy. And I'm like, that's our house. That's our street. And she starts walking backwards towards our house and I could see the fire. And I said, and to my husband, like, that has to be our house, and she's walking around 360 and it's all ablaze, except for just right behind her is black. It's the middle of the night. So it was 7 in the morning, but it's still dark. Maybe it's 6:30. So I look and I'm like, there's a fire there. And she's standing like forward of our house. And so at that point, I started to give up hope. I was shocked though, because when I saw she was on our street. My husband had to stay with the dog and my son, one of us had to. And so I took my other son and we went up there. I said, I just got to know. And I had really at that point, it wasn't being negative, but by that point I said, there's really no chance that my house is going to survive that. Like there's no chance. And I really, since my mother died, I've struggled with faith a lot. And I don't even ask for things anymore. It's really a problem. And I just was in the car with my son and I said, like, we got to say the rosary. So I took the rosary out and I hate asking for material things. And I just thought, my mother died last year, but I could hear her voice. She's like, ask for what you want. Ask what you can ask to save your house. So I started praying to save the house. And by the second Hail Mary in the first decade, my husband called and said one of our neighbors stayed behind. He's a fucking baller, this guy. Right next door, putting out embers all night. And he said, your house is still standing. And so I got there. I don't know if it was 8:30 or 9. I think I wrote it down. I can't remember.
When you left, Monica, just sorry for interrupting, but when you left the
please,
house,
I don't want to go on and on.
No, it's a great story. Not because it's kind of like titillating, but because it's so intense and how unlikely that one of us was actually a part of something so huge. So I'm really not wanting to kind of interrupt your flow, but when you left, did you feel like this is just going to be a quick, we go away for a night,
Yes.
Everything's fine? The gravity hadn't really hit you that you could lose the house and all your belongings?
When we evacuated at 3:30 in the morning, I did not seriously consider. Well, at that moment, I started thinking, wow, I think we kind of cut it close safety wise. I'm surprised. And the people across the street who their house did burn down but they were only leaving when we left. It must have come down into the houses. So there's foothills and then their houses. It must have only come down into the houses quickly at that point because other people who were closer were only evacuated when we were. But most people were gone, right? I did not think so, no. But when I saw the news, that's when I was shocked. And I recorded watching the news and you could hear me in the background saying, that's my house. But for some reason, I can't pull it up. I've been trying to send it out, but
Did you not I'm guessing because you didn't think that you wasn't going to grab the family photo albums and all of that stuff.
Right. So it's crazy because and the power was out. So even at 7 o'clock or 8 or whatever it was the night before, when we had made a pile of stuff, I didn't know the rule. The rule apparently is papers, photos, and pets. Papers, pictures, and pets, which is basically my husband got the papers. I got the pets and I didn't really take photos. I just didn't, there's too many. Oh, but I did pack a box of my valuable books. I have probably 2,000 books, but on the top shelf, I have all my old books. I have a first edition of Atlas Shrugged, The Fountainhead, We the Living, Tragedy and Hope, first editions. So I did grab those. I have a box of those and I had some, whatever. Junk silver,
I'm guessing you
stuff
never
like
thought
that.
this through beforehand. It's not something you was thinking, what would I do in a fire? This was literally acting in the moment. You just made those decisions.
No, but I knew, right. So I took jewelry, I took, gold, whatever I had. And there were some things I left behind that I just had to make a decision. Like, do you want to be carrying stuff around that if you get stopped by a cop, like you don't want to have it, I don't know. I don't want to like get too specific, but I took what I thought those books had. This is what I focused on. Small things of high value. I did not think about sentimentality because I didn't think it was going to be that bad. And you're overwhelmed because there's so much. And this is the thing about that neighborhood, especially, is that the houses are small. A lot of the people like us, they sent their kids to college and then they moved there. It's affordable, but the houses are smaller. So by the time you get into that space, everything that you have left has value to you. Everything. There's no junk. You've purged. It's what has value to you. So it's everything. And there was no place to start. So, and I didn't even, like, I took a half-packed suitcase of clothes. Like, that's crazy. It's like the Titanic sending boats out half full. I'm like, what idiots? I'm like, idiot. So I didn't do that. But anyway, when I saw it on the news that was my house, in an instant, I thought it's all gone. And it was funny because I had been really stressed over the holidays because my house was super messy. And I was like, my house has never been this messy. There's stuff everywhere. And I was like, holy cow, now it's just gone. Like, you were worried about how do I, give clothes to Salvation Army? What should I save? What should I throw away? It was all gone in my mind. And it was just a numb shock. Never cry. I didn't cry until like 4:00 the next day when something, just poignant happened, which I'll tell you. But so at 8:30, I got back to the house, and I thought when we were just looking to see if it was there. It was or it wasn't. We were going to leave. I didn't understand the scene. We got there and they had told people to leave, but they didn't have the manpower to keep people out. And, when we left, it didn't look to us. We did not see firefighters. I was doing a lot of shit talking. We saw engines far away from the fire, just idling on the road. And that upset us. But the winds, we had already had winds for 24 hours that were howling. The winds were scary. Like, I thought my windows were going to break in. So I don't really think there was any way for them to interfere with that fire. And this is something that, there are going to be some psyops or like agenda items served. Like, eventually, not too long into it, they ran out of water. So when I got there at 8:30, my hose was melted, but even when I took the hose off and turned on the water, there was no water. So at 8:30, when I got there and my house was still standing, neighbors had one stayed and one sneaked back. And they were just getting bowls and pitchers out of the neighbor's pool and throwing it on the embers. Particularly, I have these really tall cypress trees. They're like 100 feet tall. I don't know how many feet, but very tall. And they were catching all the embers and catching on fire. And then either they fall onto a house or those embers, the neighbor who had been watching the fires all night said that the way it spread was a tree would go up, he said, like a Roman candle, and then it would light another tree. And then this one I just have to tell. Hold on. So then he would say another tree would light, and then it would just go to a house. And then, so it was jumping from tree to tree and then house to house. We have a tile roof. It's an old house. It's stucco with a tile roof, real missionary style, because the missions built them like that because the Indians would send fire on the thatched roof. So they were meant to repel fire. And when we got there, we walked around the back of the house and my entire porch, like I had an old porch, was just up in smoke. It was gone. It was gone. There's no ashes or anything. And my neighbor's back house was gone. I couldn't figure it out. My house was still there. But we had basically a bucket brigade. If you could get some of those pictures, Hrvoje, it would be helpful. But
yeah, I showed them previously. I can share.
Yeah, you can't do them one by one.
Again, let me see.
If I tell you which one. So we were putting out the embers, putting out the fires. At one point, we were just spending this whole time getting buckets to put out this tree. Yeah.
Wow.
And then, so that's my son there in the white t-shirt. And I'm back here. I couldn't carry those heavy buckets full of water. So I was like, it was kind of like a bucket brigade. I would go to the pool and get the water and bring it as far as I kind of made sense to do. If there was an empty bucket there, I would take it and get the water again. So they were keeping it down as far as they could throw the water. But as you can see, there was a big flare up. And so my son ran, there was a fire truck somewhere, and he ran and got the fire truck. And they were deciding what to fight and what not to fight. Because once a house was on fire, they just tried to save the next house. There was basically no way. Sometimes they spent many hours trying to put a house out, and like the people across the street, and they left and came back only to find it ablaze again. So they were just trying to stop it from spreading. And this was a way it was spreading. So they came and put that out. Merino Engine 6 came and put that out. That was scary. And this is the next day. The pictures are showing the next day.
Wow.
When I went back, this is every house on my street almost.
And what was it like, Monica, when you got back? I imagine, in your mind, you've got all of the memories of that street, and then you're going back to a different street, right? It's not, your mind's not ready for that, I guess.
I am not even there yet. And, when I go back, yeah. Look at those pictures. So it's every house is like that. And it was really beautiful neighborhood. And I talked about it because LA that's across the street. That's my across the street neighbor. And that was the house they tried to save. And then so later the afternoon, the fire truck came back, a different fire truck. It was Temecula, Engine 83. And they told us that they decided to save our house and the two houses next to us. And when I was watching the news, I was saying I saw my house. That's my backyard. No filter. It looks like Ukraine. And that you couldn't see. I have a before and after picture if you can open that from the day before. That's my porch. So that's what the firefighters came and knocked down the fence. And there's no water damage because they were just letting it burn. They weren't hosing it down. They were just containing the material, the fuel. And I think they might have put water on it to keep the embers down. But the day before I took a picture to show the wind damage. Yeah, I went back. So there it is. My house survived. And we put those. So after the fire truck left, they said, we're not coming back. You got to keep that tree under control. And so one of the neighbors had a really tall ladder, and my son, we put it against the tree. My son got on the ladder and two guys held it, and I brought buckets, and he just threw it as high as he could, just kept throwing it, and he kept it out. But that's where it was like coal, like pieces of charcoal were flying off of burning trees. And that's what was lighting everything up. Everything. That's a telephone pole. At the bottom of that telephone pole, it's not even in the ground anymore. That hole is where it was. It just burned. It must have just shot up. So I don't know why some of the trees still stand. The palms don't seem to come down. The palms must retain water. Yeah, that's just my street. Those houses are just, I haven't even surveyed the neighborhood. Because you can't drive in there. So I couldn't drive around there, have it cordoned off. I had to sneak in. So we were fighting that all day, and the smoke, I mean, you can probably hear it in my voice, we're all, and it was, so it was houses that were going up. So the firefighters said, when it's vegetation, we don't worry as much about the smoke, but we were seeing green fire burning green. I don't know if you've ever seen that. That's chemicals. He said, you don't want to be breathing this. And we're like, well, what are we going to do? So, but at 4:00 in the afternoon, we kind of thought, okay, we could take a break. We're tired. And we heard something down the street, 5 houses down. And fires had come around the corner, but it was burning, came around the corner. So big house was on fire, and we're watching it, and we're like, I don't know about the next house. And I said to my son, go run, see if you can find a fire truck to, save this house. And by the time he got back, it had gotten on the house. Once it got on the house, especially on the roof or in the attic, they were not even going to try. So they came, but they saved the next house instead because it had a double driveway, and they thought, so what they were doing was hosing down the next house because they were getting so hot, they were combusting. And that was just right down the street from my house. If they hadn't stopped that one from spreading, I think we would not have. That's when I started thinking this is going to go again. So eventually we just had to go home, and we had to go to the hotel room and just like deal with like whatever. I don't know. My brother-in-law was watching my son and the dog, and we just had to go back. And then we came back that night and we tried to sleep in the house, but it was so toxic. So we watched for the embers. Anyway, so then we went back yesterday, and the wind's gone now, and I don't think there's a problem.
So I was checking on some of our fellow colleague podcasters who are in the area.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Parker. I just checked his Facebook. He said he's fine. William Ramsey, I think he's fine, but he was driving around and sending some photos. Peter Duke, I think his he lived in an apartment building. I think it's gone. Is this
in Altadena? If your address was Altadena, I think it's 90% chance it's gone.
Is this unprecedented? I mean,
as far as I know, we were thinking from our point of view, this was the worst fire in history. But by some crazy coincidence, and someone, on the other side of that thin red line said that they were saying firebug. So
was that early on, Monica? That was like one of the first things when you had those interactions with the firemen. They immediately was thinking, "Oh, this is some kind of arson."
They weren't thinking that. They were saying that's what the rumors were. Like they weren't assessing it at that point. So here's the thing: they cut the power at 3:30. The fire didn't start till 6:30. And when we were watching the fire, we could see it was at the power station. You could see that it was power lines, but we were like, so it looked like it was started by power lines, but it couldn't have been. And I don't know if they are saying this in the news at all, but we know, I said it on my show, they're cutting the power in half an hour or whatever this soon. So we know it wasn't the power line. So on the news, they're like, there's power lines everywhere. We're scared. Those power lines were dead. You can touch them. The super scary ones, like the big 3 braided cable ones, you could touch it. There was one in the pool there was a fucking power line in the pool that we were taking the water out of. Power was out. And it's not coming back for like a month because the power station was destroyed. But I think, if it was arson, it was one of two things, right? It was a lone nut or it was not a lone nut. So it was not a lone nut. It was somebody who was doing it for a reason. If you wanted to make it look like it was random, that looked like it was a power line, started under the power line, I don't know. I haven't gotten to like who's, who could possibly have done something like this because it's so sickening to me that I can't think like that yet. And it made me a little, those are my people. So 3 of our friends who have children with Down syndrome, we all lived in the same neighborhood because it's so affordable, lost everything. Leaders lost everything. Our people who help us lost everything. So I just asked. So they reached out to me and asked if they could help me, but like, we're the lucky ones. So this is Club 21. It's an organization in Pasadena for people who have Down syndrome and for children who have Down syndrome. And they are helping these families because there are so many displaced people that we're all living in each other's houses. You know what I mean? Like I'm arranging, I have this hotel till Wednesday, but I have to find some place to live for a month. So it's Club 21, but it's spelled out CLUBTWENTYONE.org. And then, you can, there's just a donate button there. Anything that goes there now, I said, and she said, well, they're giving gifts. They have to give it in material. So they're going to shop and give people stuff. I don't know, but we know
that's the best way for listeners to help out right now, Monica.
I think so.
Yeah. Club 21, all spelled out in
.org.
So club21.org.
Yeah, I think people can see it. They can go to your X account, club21.org, or we can include the link in the description.
There are other ways to give. I was scrambling before today to see if there was any way we could help anyone. So I asked them, I didn't post that much on Twitter. I was like, so if you look, if you look, see, that's the before. It's not the best before picture, but there's a before picture on it. Yeah. So that was the wind. And then the next picture is the same thing. and there's no filter. So it's orange. It's still orange. And actually, when we were driving up, I was surprised by how hot it was. So when we were headed back into that zone to see if the house was there or not, it was hot because their fires were everywhere. I'm surprised the reporters didn't talk about that.
Let's get into some of the, if it was organic or not. Amazing Paulie has been doing some interesting threads talking about Colson of Aviation. These are the guys behind Wellness Company who are linked to Blackwater and stuff like that. I didn't even know that they've got an aviation company that had a contract that was supposed to be up for renewal right now. And, just all these kind of strange things where you see these, strange people going on. And then I saw Robin Monotti comment. I'm going to go to his Twitter about the smart city stuff. He said he read it, so we don't have to. LA 2028 Smart LA project, which is all about surveillance sensors, fiber optic cables. And we see this, even Michael O'Fallon, who I'm a huge fan of, he was mentioning this, that we just see this over, that LA got Maui'd, he said, and that it's all about, you burn it down and build back better.
Basically. I'm looking, so I wanted to make a couple of, what I think the agendas might be. So things that were weird about it was these two huge fires started at the same time on totally opposite ends of the city. One is the poor section. So if you anytime you see someone looking kind of like a hippie or in a shitty house, like that's the Altadena fire. And if you see fancy people, that's the Pacific Palisades fire. But they started, the same size started at the same time. And in Altadena, they ran out of water. They can't run out of water in Palisades. But still, they're both out of control, same amount of damage. And so I think there are numerous agendas at work. I also think that's a crazy coincidence. I feel like the Santa Ana winds have always been strong like that. It's not climate change. It's not weather control, I don't think. But if you they're coming, they're going to come. If you did want to cause a destructive fire, even if you were just a firebug or a powers that be, you would wait for these winds and wait for a dry year. Last year was a wet year. This is a very dry year. So like our oranges were smaller. So you would wait for that. And it was very clear like that when it was so windy, it would be ideal time for that if you were going to do it on purpose. But there are agenda items. So Altadena is unincorporated. It was a place, it was historically diverse. A lot of Black people moved there during the 70s when the LA cops were out of control. Also earlier when it was like the place where workers went. Just a lot of side by side, like economic diversity, racial diversity. It was a really rich, culturally rich place of basically middle class people. And it's unincorporated. It's part of LA County, but it has its own water. And so now we feel like we're afraid, some of us, that the people are going to freak out and they're going to vote. I don't know even if it's a vote, but decide to join Pasadena, which is much more controlling, very corrupt. And I noticed one big thing. So the water issue might be used for that reason. The way it just wiped out, just flattened. The first thing when I saw that, I said, oh, they're just going to build those condos, multi-use stuff. It's like a natural 15-minute city. It's the only place in LA I've ever lived where I walk to the grocery store from my house regularly. That's why these like to see it as a moonscape when I walk past it every day for a year, basically, or every other day. So that like natural 15-minute city thing absolutely is a big part of, I think, the agenda. One thing I've been hesitating to say, like, if I won't, like, they are banning or trying to ban. I think they banned like natural gas. So we were building a pool and a little pool house, and we wanted to put a stove, kitchen in the pool house. And they said, you have to have an electric stove. You're not allowed to have gas in the house anymore. So they're going to use this because if you didn't turn your gas off, when you go back, when I went back even yesterday, you can see the gas flaring. So you see where the gas cap blew or whatever, and there's just gas fires everywhere. And then there's some places where it's just gas. We were walking by and I started to feel sick. And my son said, see that shimmering? See that shimmering? We're in gas. We're right now in gas. And I tried to call, to tell them, because that's harder to see than flaring. I'm like, I'm not worried about the stuff that's flaring. I'm worried about the stuff that's accumulating in a pocket like that. So I'm
it's
thinking,
kind of like a war zone. The way that you're describing
absolutely.
it, you go back, it sounds like just after bombs have dropped or anything. And it's
exactly.
a biohazard, it's not safe. Like even going back there now, there could still be an explosion or
absolutely
hazardous material, chemicals. You just don't know, right?
You could hear the explosions all night long. And my son, when we went there, he said, I feel like I'm in Syria. The only difference is the firemen aren't shooting at us. That was it. And you know what? Now they got the National Guard up there. So, I hopped a fence to get in the house last night.
Yeah, and there's the potential for looters as well, right?
So they might start shooting at us. They are really pushing that looter fear, and they're using that to lock down the area to the point where residents can't get in. Like that was something I had some mixed feelings about from the beginning. They didn't want us. We were fighting those fires ourselves. Like everybody was in the Palisades and Altadena. Anybody who wanted to save their home, they were there putting out embers. That's what you had to do. And they didn't have the manpower for it. And you could only do it with the swimming pools because there was no water pressure left. You had to run back and forth. They're not doing that. So
if you hadn't been there, your house would no longer be there, right? You saved the house by going back.
Well, my neighbor was there all night putting out those trees.
Wow.
So he's like a hero. I would never say his name because I love him too much, but you don't want to because he was hiding. He was hiding. They were trying to get rid of him.
Oh, so he never left at all? He never evacuated?
No, he left he sent his family out, but he said he's smart. He's like a mechanical guy. Like he's smart, like a professional engineer or something. So he just kept looking. He's like, I have 4 escape routes and absolutely none of them are blocked. So the house across the street from him went up, and that's when he said it was just Roman candles. And you could see the trees were nothing. One of those pictures is that the trees are just bare. And I said, well, what saved our houses? And I would say it's 5 things. Well, one is the rosary. So Hrvoje doesn't want to hear that one. But my mom is a powerful intercessor up in heaven. So let's say my mom put in a word for the house. There was the materials, the stucco and the tile. The firefighters decided to save it. That was a big thing, but it wasn't solely the thing. Fighting those embers all day. And I felt that there was one more thing, the materials. And I think my neighbor being up all night, staying.
It took a lot of things that are so unlikely to happen for you to...
the wind. That was the 4th thing. Yes. So I said, you could see his house, the people across the street where it went up like this. Then there were 2 houses. And then that one across the street from my house, that was these are my bruises from all the physical, it was just very physical. So across the street, so there were 2 houses in front of my house that were also saved. And then our little enclave of whatever it was, probably 6 in a row, if I looked past those trees. And he said the wind changed. He said, it's just the wind changed and it just went like this. And if you see a picture, there's one picture. Let me see.
Maybe you got lucky. Klaus Schwab's directed energy weapon ran out of juice just as they were getting to your home.
Yeah, it was organic. Like, I'm not saying that, no, the Santa Ana winds. If you wanted to start that fire, you didn't need to do anything but light a match and flick it, in my opinion. So you didn't need anything. It was just.
But this isn't normal for that region, right? These fires are not something that you have often. This is really rare what's happened.
No, they have fires up there. So as a matter of fact, when we were looking at houses, we were looking at houses. I looked at some houses that were a little bit further up into the foothills because they were a lot cheaper. And my husband said, I'm not living north of the street that we're on. So I'm not living up there, or north of like one street up. So there was a street right on the foothills, like a boulevard. There are lots of streets, but the boulevard here, and then we had a boulevard kind. He said, I'm not living north of Altadena Drive because of the bears and the fires. Or because of the bears. I'm not living in Sierra Madre because of the fires. So that's why our house was 100 years old. We're like, there's absolutely no way it's coming down here because, everything is really, really old here. And but there were always fires up there. Maybe, I don't know how long. So there was one maybe 15 years ago. There was one in 1993. The huge one in 93 did not come down that far.
This is a silly question. Maybe I'm just curious. And two things here. We've seen in places like Australia now, going back to the whole smart city climate change stuff, where in places in Australia, they're now refusing to insure homes in certain parts of the country, which is going to force people, to be relocated. And what happens there with like insurance? Is everyone insured? Do they get?
Yes.
How's that work?
Actually, so I have a what to watch out for from somebody I know, actually a listener who's old time Altadena. So I'll read a little bit about what he expects. Insurance. So they've been cracking down, and I think that the way they've been handling car insurance and house insurance is in an effort to have us not own our houses anymore and not even own our cars anymore. In San Francisco, they have driverless Ubers all over the place. We were there recently. It's freaky. So you don't own driverless cars. Driverless cars are Ubers. So you're never owning a car once they go driverless, it seems to me. And the houses too. There's obviously a major push to get us all to be renters. So our neighbor, the baller next door, he was repairing his roof recently. He said they had drones flying overhead and they said, repair your roof or we're canceling your insurance. And if we see anything wrong again, you have to replace it. The guy diagonally across the street, replaced his roof last week and his house was saved. So I think it was that he had that good roof. And we were worried then that our insurance would be canceled. So our landscaper said, hey, one of those cypress trees was dead. So it was big and brown. It was kindling 100 feet high. He said, you have to take that out because it's a fire hazard. They'll cancel your insurance. To put people in danger. So we did. By luck, we were busy people, but like a couple of months ago, we took that out. Thank God in heaven. But I think people have I'm not sure everybody has fire insurance up there because it's it's getting harder and harder to get. And here's a big thing. The fire insurance, first of all, it caps and it can rebuild your house and it can even pay for your stuff. But there was a housing shortage. We paid an insane amount of money for that house, an insane amount of money. And we're not, we're mortgaged up to the eyeballs on that house. Like it's everything we had. And we can't sell it. We have to stay there. And it's beautiful and I love it and it took care of us, but it is now basically going back there. At first it was red and my husband said it's like being on another planet. It's like being on Mars. Like we're in our house, but now our house is on Mars. And now it looks like the moon. So we're going to try to live our day-to-day life on the moon. And then they're going to start building for sure. And I feel like because it's very hard to get architectural plans, we're trying to build this little pool house. We've been working on it since we moved in well over a year ago. And the way they do it, I read this about other places, is they have architectural plans, all like cookie cutter. You can pick one. They have teams. I'm talking about like BlackRock, whoever does, maybe they sub out to real estate developers. I don't know. But the really big guys, they have stuff that they know will pass. They have it designed for your zones. They have teams of the architects, the engineers, the guys who work with the inspectors. They can streamline that stuff. They can pay top dollar for the land. And I expect that that's the way it's going to go. And a lot of people up there were older. They're not going to have the time or energy to rebuild. Our neighbor, her mother has Alzheimer's. She lives there. Her house was destroyed. A lot of people, the mothers, she said she has Alzheimer's. The only place she could really get around was in her house. The only place she could find the bathroom, make herself some food. Even in visiting the daughter, she could only stay an hour. And that, I think those people will just die. And I think people are going to end up, they said there's hardly any fatalities, but I think it's just that nobody even knows who's missing yet.
I once bought a really shitty car. It was awful. It kept breaking down, and everything that could break on it did break. And then it got stolen at one point. And the longer it was missing and the more likely it was I was going to get my insurance claim, I was like, I'm glad it's gone. And then they found it. I actually found it. I was walking home one day and I found the guy who stole it. It was parked about 3 streets away from my house. And I had that moment where I was like, I don't know if I want to find it.
Yeah.
I'd rather the car be gone and not come back. And I guess for you guys now, it's that same thing, but on a much bigger scale. It's like you've got all your stuff. I guess that's the...
Yeah, I flirted with that thought for a second. Like, are you better off? Even if it costs you kind of like a lot of dollars? And absolutely not. I mean, just for 1 second, having the feeling that everything was lost, like you had to start shutting off parts of your brain. And if you go up there and the few people you see who visited, they're just weeping in the rubble. And, these are not expensive houses. Like the one lady I saw yesterday weeping in the rubble, like, she might even have been a renter. I don't know. And I was embarrassed.
I'm glad you said that, because I prayed for the right thing. I prayed that your house was okay and that all your stuff was okay.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened. So I do think it's a blessing that you've got everything.
Your heart is
they're irreplaceable things, right?
Irreplaceable.
And all your property.
The stress, the fear, the loss is not the dollars at all. Especially in that place, not the dollars at all. It makes me sick to think about it. It just wasn't that. And I don't know how crazy it's going to be to live there. And we absolutely cannot move. We absolutely are never going to be able to get out from under because of the mortgage.
When you said you can't sell, you think, why did you say that?
I worry that the value of the house is less than the mortgage.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm not going to walk away from the mortgage.
But you don't think the rebuilding will bring the value
I think
back?
yes. Eventually, yes. I can't never sell. Eventually, when they make it a freaking 15-minute city, they'll probably want to come by and give me double, but that'll be a long time from now. But would you mind if I read the stuff from this guy's real old-time Altadena guy, and he would know? He said, I was worried. I didn't understand why I wasn't seeing firefighters. He said, when I was a teenager, a wind-driven fire went through. Some firefighters were caught or killed. I think policies changed. Since then, they're more sensitive. He said, okay, what to watch out for? Altadena finally incorporating or joining Pasadena. Canyon water rights of the various providers taken away. BlackRock enters. Multi-use redevelopment. Altadena was always organically a 15-minute city. Closure of forest access. I had hiked that mountain, that exact trail Sunday. So he said, I've been wondering, quote, affordable housing, because what they do is they build, quote, affordable housing, and then they move everybody in, and then they cut the funding for it. This is like a pattern Rosa Quarry identified. And then you have a slump, you have a tenement, because they are living there and nobody keeps it up. It's like a little trick to mess up nice neighborhoods. So he says, Altadena has long been affordable. Absolutely. He says, even with its mansion enclaves, its history is similar to that of West Hollywood. Middle-class blacks moved to unincorporated Altadena, and gay people moved to unincorporated West Hollywood, both to escape the tyranny of the Los Angeles Police Department. Also, Altadena had wineries and bars when Pasadena prohibited alcohol long before the U.S. did. Artists, proto-hippies, all went to Altadena to be left alone. But as with so many scenarios, the residents may finally sell out to the corporations, including a municipality, and ultimately it will cost them more to live there. They won't realize. Yeah, he's speculating there were just enough firefighters for the TV. This video I have, which for some reason I can't download, like they're saying, the person on the ground is saying, I don't see a fire truck anywhere. And the anchor people are saying, I'm sure they're right around the corner. And she's saying, no, I've been everywhere. We've been driving around. We can't find them anywhere. They're saying, come on, they're fighting fires. And she's like, I can't see any of them anywhere. And then they're like, okay, we'll get back to you. they cut her off. Like, they don't like that. But there was probably a reason. The winds were crazy, but don't lie about it. Just tell the truth. Anyway, but he thinks, oh yeah, more tax funding for the firefighters. Like, they'll definitely want to do that.
And then I read on Tuesday that LA got their first openly gay, lesbian, female fire chief. I mean, the timing on that was
definitely DEI. But the fire truck that saved our house came by twice, and the head of that fire truck, the person or that team, the triage person, the person who makes the decision, was a woman who had like 30 years experience. And she said she'd never seen anything like it. She got off the truck and her hat blew off, her hard hat, which is like strapped to her head. But they definitely, I mean, my friend is saying, you got extra lucky. They definitely needed to show some of that on TV. So I saw it on TV. And I saw the fire trucks also. So it's possible that, I don't know, like by the time I got there, which was like, also the Pasadena fire trucks were in the Palisades. The Pasadena fire trucks, which were the fire department that should have been there, were down at the other fire that started first. That I saw on TV too, Pasadena fire trucks. And then they panned away from it. And I'm like, yeah, because you don't want people to know that everybody abandoned their posts and they're not going back.
So now you're like the Oprah Winfrey of that area. Like everyone else is.
Oh my gosh, please
you're like
don't.
You're like this, the one who got sent.
No.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you, maybe to bring a bit of comedic relief to this really tense story. Like, was there any moments when you guys had evacuated? I imagine it was just horrifying and nightmarish, where you had any comedic relief, where something happened where you just stopped.
Oh, yeah. We were, I mean, I'm trying to remember what.
Because you had Arturo, right? You had your new crazy dog and.
Oh yeah, Arturo.
Wow.
Arturo. Yes. So the dog is here. That is actually the biggest problem for me right now. I've had many friends who've offered us to live there because we can't go back. But everybody has a dog, and this dog is a psycho and cannot be around other dogs. So yeah, well, my son and I, it was surreal, and it was such an intense physical experience. I mean, one lady, when we were walking back up there the next day, and she was in front of her house telling us her story, and she said, oh yeah, we got the chainsaw and started cutting the trees down, which is what we were trying to do, but ours were too tall. I called the guy who had taken out that dead tree. I said, you got to get up here. And he said, they won't let me. I was like, could you try? And I guess asking someone to go into like the biggest fire in history is like not, I'm not going to blame them, but yeah, so the chick who cut her own tree down with a chainsaw, and the tree was this big, when she said, what street do you live on? And we told her, and she said, oh, like she recoiled in horror because that was that street. But it was such a, I said to my son, we definitely had some laughs along the way, which was crazy. If I was not aware of the level of destruction. See, I couldn't comprehend it because the smoke was so thick. But I said later, this kind of stuff happens. These kind of things can be intentional. He knows, but I said, but in it is this thing right here, which we are doing with our neighbors and ourselves. We are exercising our good character, our ability to understand the physical world. We're exercising it. And with an E, not an O, we are exercising it, and we have learned from it, and we're stronger for it. And they don't want those kind of people out there. So there's always, we're the ember, we're the embers now of people who can feel like they can take personal responsibility, because that was a big thing. They wanted to keep everybody out because they don't think you can handle it. But we could have, I think people could have saved their houses if they had made the choice to stay or not stay. If if they had been felt empowered to make the decision. Nobody north of me, though. Nobody north of me. There was no way, in my opinion, anyone up there could have saved. But
this is the FEMA This is the technocracy, the bureaucratic state. I mean, for me, we should live in the world like, it's take your chance. Let me go to my house or not, whatever the event is. And
yes.
I'm a little crazy. I was just thinking what you were saying before. Of course, I would never want to go through such an experience, but this is another case for minimalism, which I like. But also,
my gosh, yes.
And in some ways, I would kind of feel liberated if that happened to me. And I've got nothing. I think of again Rudyard Kipling's "If" poem, which I have right in front of me, Art of Malin, this poster, and it's like you lose everything in one toss of what did they say, pitch and start anew.
Cat Stevens has a song like that.
Yeah, and just on the smart city thing, I feel like what's happening in California and here in Mexico where I am, I just see them accelerating. This crazy. Just the other day, we're seeing them now. Like literally, you see nothing, and then like a week later, there's an entire edifice. So they're building these apartment buildings literally all over the place. And just the other week, and I think what they do is they have like a covering, so you can't see what's behind it. And then when they have the structure, it's like, and literally like going down the same street that I go down on the other side, there's two entire skeletons of a new apartment buildings that they're building, and again, these apartment buildings used to be you get 2 car parking spaces. Now it's only 1 car parking space.
Oh yes, they're definitely doing
it's just
that.
Like you see, like from Mexico to California, this agenda is accelerating, and I do want to get to the North American Union thing, which I think is related. But anything else you want to say about California fires?
That was the one.
I'll just jump in for a second. Just one comment on what you said, Monica. I think when there's a crisis or something like really traumatic like that, all of the research, like even when it's something terrible, like for example, a woman getting raped or sexually assaulted, that if the person acts, even if the crisis still ensues, like say someone responds and tries to fight back, that it's far easier psychologically to deal with. And those people have much better outcomes in the long run than the people who don't get to have any action in that moment or don't fight back, for example, if it was an attack. And I think it's probably the same with fires. Like, even if you went back and you tried to fix it and it didn't, I think just that's a part of the human experience, feeling like you had a say in it, that it wasn't just done to you, you did your best and your best wasn't good enough. But to not let people act at all, I think it's very damaging in the long term psychologically.
That's that crazy thought. Yeah, we even had some second guessing about whether we should have stayed and hosed down the house, but the house did kind of. But I have to say, like, it was so funny because I was so like, my house was such a freaking mess after my kids were home, and I couldn't find anything. So I really couldn't save anything because just stuff was, so the minimalist thing is not a bad idea because
there's a lesson as well.
I couldn't take anything because I couldn't think through it all.
How, like, for listeners, it's really crazy that this happened. Actually, there's 2 weird synchronicities that I want to mention with you. One is that I just made a post about a week ago on Patreon talking about if no matter where you are in the world, it's really useful just to have some stuff ready, your documents in a fireproof wallet, some cash, whatever you might want to take in a crisis, ready to go. Even if you don't think that's you or your location, people call it a bug out bag, but it's not about that. It's not about running to the forest. It's about, if I need to leave my house in a crisis, have some, just think through that. Like where would it be? What's the plan of action? And I guess you got to live that like a week after I wrote that. Sorry, you're on mute, Monica.
We had a fireproof box that had birth certificates, passports and everything. So I didn't even think of it. My husband said, I'll go get the box, you get the jewelry. And so it was pretty good. Yeah, it's your papers. And then the next day when I went back, I took the pictures because it was still dangerous. The house was still
and the other weird thing was the morning that the fire happened, the first thing I did
and I took my good mic,
go on to X, and I was thinking about you for a second. Like I woke up and I never just go onto X because I barely post on there. And I was thinking about you for a second. And I remember saying something. I was actually in bed with my laptop. And I said to my wife something about, like, I think Monica might have messaged me or something. And you sent me the message about the fire. That was the morning. That was really weird. I had like an impulse that morning that you'd sent me.
Well, I figured you'd get it, the rosary thing. It's like, oh, Mike's he's gonna.
Oh, I totally. That day, I made it. I made it a priority to. I went for a run and found a nice place in the forest, because around here in the forest you've got loads of crosses and statues, and I was like, oh, I need to pray for that, for your house and your neighbors. And I'm sure, like all the listeners, you know, our heart goes out to everyone who's affected. It's to hear a story from somebody who was there, like you. That's so wild, because I think one of the problems we've got is these things happen all the time, and people get desensitized to the actual human side of it. Everyone's talking about what it was about, the conspiracy, but actually the most important part of it is just humans. You know, people are suffering right now, and we're all kind of exposed to this. You know, I don't know. I don't even know kind of what to say right now, because it's so awful what's happening to people.
Well, I did at first. I have to say, people like, how did you feel about your house? I was like, absolutely. Like Hrvoje was saying, like, absolutely. We were just, thank God everybody is safe, because it really was cut a little bit close. And now that I have my house and I'm not dealing with that kind of loss, I feel, you know, my son says, you've got survivor's guilt. Like and the people whose houses were lost have texted me and said, you know, my house was very cute. People like my house because it was so old. And they were like, I'm so glad your house made it. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I think they'll be very glad that you got to share not just your story, but it's their story too, of how it's affected you all. And I think this is going to be a really important podcast, because it's one that people can listen to a different side of it to what's actually being shown in the alternative media. We've spoken about some of the theories and things, but I think it's more important just to get that human experience and testimony from you.
It's a little embarrassing to talk like personal stuff. You don't know what you sound like. She's this chick, you know, she thinks she saved her house. Like, you know, like it was not like, but all we did was douse embers and stuff. But I feel, just really, it was just really just luck or a miracle. There was no going back. I don't know. I mean, maybe my neighbor is a hero, but the whole thing, it's very personal and weird to share. People ask, how'd you feel? I'm like, I don't even know how to articulate emotions. I'm like, I'd rather do a spreadsheet than talk about my feelings.
This morning, Ian Davis posted a comment saying, in my opinion, 2025 will be the year of the so-called polycrisis. Engineered health, climate, economic, financial crises, and war will combine to overwhelm populations with fear and confusion as we drive towards 2030, the strategy of tension. And I think that's exactly, I think, precisely right. And it's going to affect all of us. What's happening to you with the environmental climate fire thing?
Oh, yeah, California, of course, the climate thing. The
smart agenda 2030. Oh, gosh. I'm having issues with the neo-feudalism and financial stuff. Mike, you know, you're closer to the war front. And so I think it's just going to be, these things are just going to accelerate. And I think everyone's going to be affected in some way. And I don't know if we want to just quickly go through the North American Union thing, which is just mind-boggling. I've got a few clips here. Let me go to you can see my, can you see Kevin O'Leary on the screen?
Yes.
I'll just play this 1 minute clip. Let me know if you can't hear the audio.
With President-elect Trump on this issue.
I had two topics that I wanted to talk to him about. Number one was integrating Canada towards a North American Union for greater strength, just period. The world's a difficult place these days, and most Canadians would like to look at that opportunity without giving up their sovereignty. So low-hanging fruit would be combined currency, for example, combining the Bank of Canada with the Fed, things like that. We are the largest trading partners. And just to ask him because this was on Saturday, to say these meetings you're having with Trudeau and finance ministers from Canada, with all due respect, sir, are a complete waste of time. This guy's going to get eradicated out of the Canadian political landscape. Give the Canadians a chance to re-elect a leader, just like you got re-elected, that has a 4-year mandate, just like you have, and let's get down to business. And I hope they didn't land on deaf ears. I think he saw the rationale in that. That was one topic. But I had another agenda item that was very important to me. And
I don't doubt Pierre Poilievre gets in power, and he's the Canadian version of Trump, or later on Mark Carney. But, this used to be conspiracy theory, and now it's mainstream stuff, Fox, CNN, and it's like, it's a wonderful thing. It's like, it doesn't exist. You're a conspiracy theorist. Oh, here it is. It's a wonderful thing. And I've told my story when I was in Geneva School of Diplomacy. Some of us were railing against the New World Order and world government. And our globalist elite supervisors were like, you guys are, they actually gave us a lecture where they said, you guys need to stop criticizing this. There's no world government. And literally within the same lecture, the guy's like, okay, there is, but it's a good thing. It's like, it doesn't exist. It's the ultimate gaslighting. And here they are with North American Union. I got a few more comments here. This was a great meme of it's a picture of Risk, and it's the game Risk, and Trump saying, if you control all the territories within a continent, you get bonus armies. It's a no-brainer. And then here's a Club of Rome map where they want to map the world into 10 regions. They did this in the 1970s, and it says, if you are on board with bringing in Canada and Greenland, you are accepting the New World Order agenda. Here's an article from New York Times, 1976, which talks about Club of Rome and how they divided the world up into 10 regions. And the crazy,
I think you deserve credit as well, Hrvoje, because you've been backing on about this for years. You always mention the North American Union and the African Union, and you always bring it up, and here it is. It's happening.
And I had the last living interview with the father of the North American Union, Robert Pastor, in December 2013. I Skyped him into my classroom. He passed from cancer in January, and that's up on my Dissident Thinker channel linked to Geopolitics Empire. But, last night I was listening to Patrick Wood. He did a great 2-hour interview with Brandon House, I think, Worldview, talking about North American Union. And the Technate, here's Ian Davis publishing the North American Technate, the Technate of America. It's like literally this plan has been around for a century, literally, and they're doing it now. And the craziest thing is, and here's an article I found the other day, African Union. So we got the European Union, North American Union, and the African Union is coming along just swimmingly. It says that they have an ambition in the African Union to make it a citizens' union. It's still unfulfilled. This involves cooperation with civil society, creating a Pan-African parliament. Like, all of a sudden, it's like, bam, it's going live, African Union, European Union, North American Union. But the craziest thing, my second point here, and then let me just get through my rant and hand it over to you, but the alternative media, like, I think we've talked about this before. This was one of the reasons Cognitive Dissidents was created. You've got all of these alt media controlled oppositions doing a 180. This Chadwick Moore, he's like, I don't want to give Trump any more ideas, but these guys, he's showing a map of Australia. So he's like, let's have Australia join the North American Union. And I'm just like, why don't we just go straight to the end game, world government? Let's stop this foreplay. Here's a meme of Trump and Obama at Carter's funeral recently, and it says they're talking to each other, and it's like, I got them to cheer for the New World Order, says Trump. And again, Benny Johnson, right? He's one of these controlled ops. He's like, welcome to the Gulf of America, promoting North American Union. You've got clandestine. I always knew something was up with this bio-clandestine guy who got famous in the COVID era. He's promoting this. So all these big accounts that are MAGA, it's like they were part of this PSYOP. And, Alex Jones, what happened to Alex Jones? He made Endgame documentary. He was in 2006 in Ottawa at the Bilderberg meeting. It's like, North American Union is coming, it's bad. And then he's promoting it now. And I thought this was an interesting comment from Navigating the Lies. He said, the Bible talks about unclean spirits like frogs. And the alt media, conservative alt media, they talk about Pepe the Frog, and here's Jones playing with.
We finally found Trump's real boss from another dimension.
obsessed with these frogs. And then you've got David Icke calling out, Glenn Beck. Again, Glenn Beck talked against North American Union. He's on board. He's interviewing Charlie Kirk, who just flew out to Greenland with Don Jr., pro North American Union. It's like this guy, Stop World Control, David Sorensen. You came across his stuff during COVID. I mean, you go through his stuff. These are Pied Pipers. He's like, Zuckerberg is on our side now, and Elon Musk is with us, and like, I mean, you listen to the guy.
Guys, I'm sorry. Well, it's happening again.
I mean, people. I'm not going to show the clip, but it's just unbelievable how they are gaslighting us. And I mean, what do you guys think on all of this?
Yeah, I agree with everything that you're saying. It's wild to see these long-standing talking points being brought in through the right, and that's the power of flip-flopping. That's why you do it. That's why you go from left to right. It's to get the people on the right to cheer on agenda points that you couldn't get them to cheer on otherwise. And you have to do it with heroes, and there's a lot of heroes out there right now.
I put in the chat there, Hrvoje, a post that I put up in 2015. So the material I'm discussing in that post is prior to that. And it was during the campaign. 2015 was when there was the primaries for the Republican election candidate for the 2016 election. And Ted Cruz, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump. And William Weld was the libertarian guy. And I found this document that William Weld signed as one of the two co-authors. It was a Council on Foreign Relations document on the North American Union. Yes, see, it doesn't exist anymore, but I had summarized it. So if you go back, you can see what was on the agenda. Heidi Cruz was on that task force as well. So you don't have to do that. Just click on the link that I sent you. Oh, you might be able to go back and get it, but I summarized it, which is probably better because it's a 32-page document. If you click back on the link I sent you in the chat.
I'm sure it's still available because I actually use this material in my classes when I taught.
What I'm saying is you can get that 32 pages. You can those are the bullet points. That's what it entails is what I'm saying. Let me see if I can just read it real quick. It says it's to lay the groundwork for freer flow of people, for full mobility of labor and goods across Canada, Mexico, and the United States. To facilitate this, rules and regulations on labor and the environment, among other things, should conform across the tri-national region. And it says they harmonize the highest prevailing statute, which means whichever has the strictest environmental laws, the strictest labor laws, that's going to be the default law. It says they want increased information and intelligence sharing on local and national levels, both military and law enforcement, interoperable training exercises. Of course, if you want to enforce a law that's unpopular in your country, bring in the other guy's army. It's the way they do surveillance too. They wanted a North American border pass. This is more than 10 years ago, and it was Republicans in the Council of Foreign Relations with biometric identifiers. They want to establish a North American energy and emissions regime with a tradable voucher system. This is important. Creation of a North American Advisory Council with a complementary private body, quote, that would meet regularly or annually to buttress North American relationships along the lines of the Bilderberg or Verkund conferences organized to support transatlantic relations.
Did it actually say Bilderberg?
Yeah. Yes, that's a quote in the thing. If you look at my thing, that's an actual
I asked, quote. So this document, again, this is CFR, Building a North American Community.
Very good.
I used this in my courses, and then this was the basis for Robert Pastor's book, which I think
interesting.
I have it behind me. It's called The North American Idea, and this was co-written. It included Robert Pastor, and in my interview with him, I brought up Bilderberg. And he just scoffed. He scoffed, and because there's the scan of the 1980 meeting of the Bilderberg meeting of 1980, we have the document, and in the 80 meeting they talk about the way I taught it was that was the first like primary source verifiable that we could find, the 1980 meeting, where they talked about creating a North American sort of community. And then you go from 1980, because this stuff, they discussed this stuff first in the globalist back rooms, right? Like Bilderberg.
Right.
And then it gets thrown out politically. So 1989, you have the Canada-US bilateral agreement. And then they build on that. Then you have 5 years later, 1994, NAFTA. So you kind of see the genesis. It's first in the Bilderberg boardroom, 1980, 1989, bilateral, 1994, NAFTA, and then on and on.
What year was this document that I can't find the year? You just found it in the Wayback Machine. What is the year of it?
2005.
Okay, so 20 years ago. Yeah, they absolutely wrote Bilderberg in there. And the last thing they said was that they were going to have a creation of a North American inter-parliamentary group that will include the U.S. Congress along with Canadian and Mexican parliamentary representation who play key roles in policy. And the newly created North American Advisory Council, which was likened to the Bilderberg Group, could provide an agenda and also support. So they're saying that the CFR Bilderberg type group would provide, which is totally unconstitutional, not allowed to do that, the agenda and the support for this group, which is an interoperable parliament that's goal is to adopt the highest standards, the most restrictive laws currently in effect in any of the three countries. Pick and choose the most restrictive across each country and apply it to everybody. That's just one of the things.
Yeah. It's going down.
And of course, it's a Republican, and those guys were Republicans too.
Here's the document. Let's see if I'm going to just type in Bilderberg and see if
there it
is in the document along the lines of the Bilderberg. It's in there. And then if you go to 1980 Bilderberg meeting, let's see in the search, it doesn't pop up so quick. Search isn't like it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see on WikiLeaks if it's still there. There it is. WikiLeaks 1980 meeting in Bilderberg. Where's the file here? As you can see. Yeah, you can see it. And then somewhere you can't search in this document, but it talks about North American community 1980. So, 10 to right. North American fault line. Yeah. So anyways, any other thoughts on this? Here it is, the possibility. See, I found it I thought you see how easy this is, folks? this is from memory. I just opened the document and I literally scanned, I literally scanned down and I found.
Yeah, you had the map in your brain.
Here it is.
Already.
It says point 10 on page 90. I literally just 1 second scanned to it.
That's crazy.
The possibility at some point of something resembling a North American bloc embracing at least Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. And this is 1980.
At least.
Right.
At least.
Bilderberg. So this is the life of an academic. When you're obsessed about this stuff, it's like I literally just go down to the page without looking crazy. Anyways.
That's why I love the pros. People, the professionals, people who were academics, or I love Jeremy Kuzmarov. He was also an academic, professional journalist. Sometimes a lot of them, I think they're fake, even when they turn, but they bring such good skills.
North American Union. I mean, it's unbelievable, and the MAGA Trump is pushing it. So this
wrapped
is the craziest,
wrapped in a flag and carrying a Bible or a cross. Isn't that the famous expression? Fascism will come to. So it made me think. I always also think about the DEI stuff and the woke thing and all of that. Now there's reaction, and you always think of the power elite, the people who are behind these agenda, as being kind of liberal. They push the DEI stuff because they somehow ideologically like it. And I'm starting to think, the reaction is the action, that they're actually really elitist, racist fascists who gave us the woke stuff to get a reaction so they could have a race-based society. Everybody has recorded their race. Every time you go to the doctor here, you have to write your race. I don't do it. But I mean, everybody is registered as a self-identified race here, and they could just make a big triangle. They got their hierarchy. You asked for it. And they'll give you welfare to stay on the bottom, is my guess.
I just wanted to add, because that maybe we can get to the UK stuff too, but just on that, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, on one hand, that's eugenics, on the other, it's classification for technocracy.
And it's a kind of feudalism too, like that Richard Poe. Have you ever talked to Richard Poe? Did you talk?
I just had him on like a week or two ago.
Okay, yeah. Somebody told me, because I heard him a long time ago, probably on your show, and I was like, who is this guy? I just bought his book. I got to read it. And I remember hearing him say a long time ago, it's like, they just want to walk down the street and not have the riffraff there. They want to have what they want. And they liked it when it was, knights and squires.
And maybe, Mike, on this point of crypto and Bitcoin, I've noticed a lot of you've got the MAGA crowd with the Bitcoin bros and the fake alt conservative media. And I've noticed, looking at the accounts of these Bitcoin maxis, that they're now pro North American Union. So it's like there's something where they've bought into the Bitcoin stuff, which is the technocracy. So they've already bought into the technocracy. And so for them, North American Union, which is technocracy, it automatically makes sense. And it's just, for me, wow, to watch the Bitcoin bros be fully on board with the North American technate. I don't know if you guys have any thought on that.
Yeah, I think once you go down a path, once you've already kind of bought in whatever it is into any narrative, it's really hard to backtrack at that point. And with the Bitcoin community, it's so rare that you find anyone in there that's actually thinking about the bigger picture. I think right now, it's mainly a crowd of people looking to earn more money. And a lot of them have earned a lot of money and they want to earn even more money. So that's what they're going to support, anything that does that. And the integrity level is low. There are some people I know, I think we mentioned before, people like Gabriel Custodia, he's a decent guy, and Monica's smiling. Yeah, we've all spoken to Gabriel and we like him and his content. And yeah, he'll actually call a spade with Bitcoin. He says, listen, it's not delivering what it used to. It's probably not safe to use for privacy and for being outside the system. And that's what I'm not against Bitcoin in terms of a speculation, but there's got to be some principles here and integrity in terms of, listen, it's clearly being used to take people towards technocracy, the same way that many of these other agendas and people in the alt media are dragging you towards technocracy. I was just reading on Twitter this morning, Russell Brand talking about how actually Andrew Tate would make a great, we've all done things wrong in the past, guys, but Andrew Tate's actually probably a really good guy, because I don't know if you've seen, but Andrew Tate came out and said he's going to run for British Prime Minister. Now, clearly that's insane and ridiculous, but there's a lot of people saying, well, that's not a bad idea. So Russell Brand immediately came to his support and said, he made about 3 tweets, actually. In fact, let me just tell you a few I've got. Them.
He created the political party, Andrew Tate, called Bruv, unbelievable. Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're at now. I think we're living in a bit of a parody of ourselves. And Russell Brand said, before you dismiss Cobra Tate for some of the wild things he's said on the internet, bearing in mind, it's not the wild things he's said that people are upset about. It's the numerous rape claims and videos of him being verbally and potentially physically abusive towards women. I think that's what people are mostly and not too happy about. And he said, you better understand that the independent media is changing the world quicker than the old institutions of power can fathom. It is inevitable that independent media alliances will shape and even form new political power. Don't rule anything out anymore, which I think is exactly what they're doing. They're using the alternative media to help advance these agendas. He posted again later on the same day, whatever you think of Cobra Tate, he appeals to a lot of people, and he's a vessel for a lot of ideas that cannot be repressed and need to be discussed. And then later on, he posted again about Andrew Tate, 3 in a day, and he said, like all controversial characters, and I know a lot of people see me as one, Cobra Tate likely represents ideas and traits that have value even if they've said some crazy stuff in the past, which we've all done. So to me, it makes me feel a bit sickly inside when I see all of these characters that really did just come out of nowhere. I mean, you've got people like Hrvoje, people like Moric, you've been doing your shows a long time. And then all of a sudden you've got people like Russell Brand, Andrew Tate. And to me, they're so transparent, and yet they are actually sadly dragging on forward a lot of people to support all kinds of agendas. And discernment's gone out the window, guys. So anything you want to add to that?
Let me just share this. When you said Andrew Tate's ideas, I tweeted, I said, I still can't get over the time that Andrew Tate suggested it would be better that I have sexual relations with a handsome man that have an ugly woman. And here is the clip. Let's see, here it is. Okay.
Rather have sex with a transsexual, which is a legitimate 10, or a woman, which is a legitimate 1. And everyone's sitting there clicking woman, because they think they're going to be gay if they do anything else. But they're not actually thinking about the question. I am so smart. I operate on so many levels higher than the average man. You people are not thinking about the question. When I say a 1 and a 10, I mean Megan Fox with a dick. That's the tranny. Or Hulk Hogan with a pussy. That's the girl. This is the question I'm asking. Megan Fox or Hulk Hogan? So you're thinking, well, I don't want to be gay, so I just clicked the girl, the number 1, did it? You're gonna fuck Hulk Hogan? Okay, there's a pussy, but he's got mustache and muscles and shit. He's all hairy, big dude, 6'5". It's pretty gay to me. That sounds pretty gay. I don't care if it's a pussy. That is gay. Whereas Megan Fox, okay, he's got a dick, but maybe you can like scoot it out the way. I'm still Megan Fox.
I mean, these people are like someone like that, right? It's just trash. And he is a person I was like, I mean, that's not even like funny it's funny to watch, only that he is somebody who people are taking
it's
seriously.
Clear that it's propaganda.
Yeah, like this guy
kind of propaganda.
And like all of the people that they're pitching now to come save us all, and that's what it is, right? It's like, you're done with the political system. Well, okay, now you can cheer on these guys instead. And all of them are people who literally ride the back of that same system. They're all super wealthy people. They all make a ton of money from being so controversial. So it's not like they're suffering for their art. They are really getting
and
paid
their
a lot
parents
of money.
are CIA or they're married into royalty. Like I'm using the term now, Pied Pipers. It's mainstream alternative media, new narrative network, and it's becoming so clear. Pied Pipers, Alex Jones, Glenn Beck, Charlie Kirk, Russell Brand, Andrew Tate, Candace Owens, and it's just kind of like, it's so clear now. What are they going to do with us, though, that we can see through this now? They're going to
you're getting, I don't want to like out you, but like you're never getting rich doing this. So they don't have to do anything. But I wanted to just say one thing. It's a little more, and get back to a little bit more obvious of what's really going on when they make something called bruv or get these. Did you guys hear like a year or two ago, a woman who has Down syndrome was elected to the Spanish parliament?
Yes, I remember.
I have a son who has Down syndrome, so I'm not slagging on this chick, and you don't want to discriminate against people based on their IQ, which is ridiculous. But I'm glad she's there because she's showing what it's really all about. She cannot possibly comprehend. My son is the smartest Downs kid I ever met in my life, and I met a lot of them. There's no way he can understand it. He wants to be mayor, and I'm like, you know what? You could probably win. And it wouldn't make any difference. It wouldn't make any difference.
Would people have acted
power.
the same? Would people have responded the same if it was porn? If she was like a porn actress now and they'd have gone crazy. So,
right.
Do you not see the problem here? Like if it's meant to be the best person for the job, it's not about excluding people. It's about, come on, be real. And yeah, that's a good question to ask, right? Would it be, we're going to choose a pilot based on DEI? No, nobody wants that.
They're all face jobs, though. They're all face. She's the same, plays the same role. They're just all face jobs. That Andrew Tate he didn't just sit there cooking that stuff up and this, the river that he's, riding in is flowing where it flows. I mean, that guy, I remember when Eric Erickson did some big, like, never Trumper thing. And he works at the radio station I worked at. And I said to the program director, I'm like, that guy did not do that without, like, asking somebody. And he said, well, he didn't ask me. I was like, yeah, I don't think you're his boss. He was like, oh, come on. I was like, just saying.
Yeah, there's this whole element that, they have to show these people to be somewhat persecuted. Like they're being arrested, they're having the businesses closed down, but ultimately they never go anywhere. And it's never been easier to censor somebody. I said this to somebody recently. I was like, I understand that to you, it looks like these people are being cancelled and censored. Like, for example, Russell Brand, he ended up on Rumble, but I'm like, he's got 11 million Twitter followers. Like, they're not going anywhere. These people are going to be made out to be persecuted, build the narrative, right?
They make more money off of YouTube, off of Twitter. Like Alex Jones, when he got thrown off YouTube, I figured he's just going to make more money because he already has a following and they'll go find him there. They'll find him at a spot where he's actually got some profit margin.
And Richard Poe, that's what he told me in our interview recently. He said sheep dipping, right? And this is the process of sheep dipping, where you just take a patriot and dip them, like a little bit of persecution, and then street credibility, and then that just increases people moving towards them. And Trump was, he's the ultimate example of being sheep dipped with the genesis of this podcast, the quote assassination attempt against him, the persecution of the past few years. That was all preparation for this long game now where we are in, where they need him to pass through the end game, North American Union, technocracy, and so I think
just think this as well, guys. Like, let's talk about what's happening in the UK right now. There's something huge taking place, and it's related to something that's been an ongoing issue, let's say, for the UK, which is grooming gangs. And this isn't anything new. We've known about this for decades. Many of the stories they're discussing now are decades old, and yet there are still new elements being added as well. There's more cities that keep being outed as a city where there's grooming gangs that are still taking place now. So it's not an entirely old story. But just going back to what we were talking about with Russell Brand, he is tweeting about basically supporting Andrew Tate right now. Whilst that's going on, he's not made any tweets so far as I know about that. He could be talking about that. He could be elevating that story, but the establishment doesn't want that story elevated, as far as I can see. I mean, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe there's something else going on, but it seems to me like they're trying to bury that story. There was a vote in Parliament. They're not going to do an inquiry. And just think about how wrong it is that he's actually trying to elevate somebody where there's big question marks about whether he actually has harmed underage women as well. I mean, that was the suggestion. And that's what he's chosen to amplify right now on his 11.3 million Twitter account. So I found that interesting, but maybe we could just stop on that topic as well about what's happening in the UK. One question that I do have from it all is why now? Because, like I said, this has been going on for decades. It feels to me like they're setting up a lot of societies now for internal implosion. Like they're really trying to spread mistrust amongst the populace in all of the institutions. And that could be something else going on. So, sorry, Monica, I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, I would just say that it might make sense to go back to that 2010 Rockefeller Foundation technology for the there were four scenarios. So there was lockstep, there was hack attack. So what they have is an access of like communication and technological advancement or whatever. And their goal was to march towards a technocracy. And they're saying, depending on the circumstances in these quadrants, wherever society is, we can always get the world to get closer to our goal. We just have to have different approaches depending on the circumstances prevailing at the time. So you look at lockstep during COVID, but really hack attack has a lot of the elements, literally, that's like the smoke, that hack attack had a lot of the factors. And I would go back and look at all of the scenarios because it'll tell you information. That's when I started looking at, when I looked at that like 5 years ago, I said, I think they're going to start shutting down air travel because they're going for a low communication environment, I think. And anyway, but I haven't revisited it. So
I was going to say, It was technocracy. Same thing answers you, Monica, to Mike, that they want to destroy the institutions to bring in algocracy rule by AI, this new system. And just what you mentioned, Monica, this morning, I was reading, again, Richard Wellings. He's one of my favorite sources in the UK, who talks about the net zero stuff, smart cities. And he said that now in the UK, if you, to go visit the UK, if you're not European, you have to pay a small fee and ask for like this new digital permission, which is the same thing going on in Europe. And he says, and I read the article, that there's been 90,000 less travelers to the UK because of this, which is the point. And now I don't even know if I'm going to go to Europe this year because of if I pay $5,000 for tickets for the family and then we go and then they say you didn't fill out the form correctly, you can't enter. It's like, what? And so they don't want people to travel. Yeah,
I was stuck for a day in Seoul trying to get into Vietnam because the dates of my birthday were in American style instead of international style. So yeah, you take big chances.
I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're going to see hard borders again. Especially in Europe as well. We're meant to have free movement here, but I think it's going to become way harder to move because they've been doing this already in Germany, for example. So they're under the guise that a lot of Ukrainians were trying to flee from Poland and go to Germany because they wanted to get further into Europe. And so they started to make the border much tougher. They've done the same in Slovenia at the south for immigrants. So they've actually now militarizing that border, having checkpoints. They're doing the same on the Polish border with Belarus. So they've put a really hard border there. And they're doing it under the guise of all different crises and quasi-legitimate reasons. But I think that is something that we're going to start to see a lot more of across the world.
You just reminded me one more thing on that. In Mexico here, I just last night read a Czech family, a husband and wife from Czech Republic with a kid or two. I think they had 1 or 2 kids. They bought tickets to come to Puerto Vallarta here in Mexico for 10 days. They arrived to Puerto Vallarta. The National Guard and Mexican Migration assault the father. They asked for their hotel reservations. And so they hadn't made any. They were just going to I do this sometimes. I just go and there's hotels and I'll just go to a hotel, or they were going to backpack. This is Russian communist bloc style. Like if you go to Russia or North Korea or somewhere, you have to show where the reservation, they're not going to let you in. They're not going to give you a visa unless you show exactly where you're going to stay. Mexico's doing this now. And this is a part of and then so they assaulted the guy and deported the father home. They separated the family. They deported him back to Czech Republic, and then later on, the wife and kid. And this just happened in Puerto Vallarta, which I was there recently in Mexico. So the Mexican government is going crazy. Anyways.
I will also say that what Mike's saying, it seems like the real agenda between this insane immigration situation. So Trump brought it up, really accelerated the immigration conversation in 2015. It's so much worse than it was then. So much worse. Now he'll come back, he'll harden it up, you're right, and it'll stop. But that doesn't mean that the North American Union doesn't happen. It says free labor and goods, but I think of it as an analogy to what's happening with the drones. This crazy weird thing with the drones in New Jersey. We don't know who the drones belong to. And then yesterday, I was watching with the firefighter and like a drone hit the scooper plane. They are absolutely looking to suppress the civilian drones. They really controlling information, but of course, accelerating the military or authoritarian drone situation. Same thing with the movement of people. They will control it. But as Ron Paul said, the walls will keep you in.
Yeah, and I think people have to really get used to zooming out and not cheering on everything that feels like it's benefiting their team. You're not on a team. No, none of these people want you to succeed. You have to understand that even if something sounds like it's working to your favor or it's some kind of reveal that they don't want, what you often find is, no, it's going to still take you back to the same place. Like with all this stuff that's happening in the UK, I will say I'm absolutely happy and glad that this is a topic of conversation. It's something that's close to my heart. But on the same side of that, I can see how this could quite easily be them getting people riled up for 2025, where they want people to start to tear chunks out of their own institutions and just breed mistrust. So we accept new things.
Yes, they absolutely want us to lose all faith in anything that has to do with the Constitution, which of course is a flawed document. But I've always defended the Bill of Rights, and I've always said the only thing I didn't from the beginning, Trump never talks about the Bill of Rights. Yes, I agree. We could probably go on forever, but I gotta hop.
And just on that note, I remember now in my paid subscribers analysis talking about the North American Union, Thomas Jefferson spoke about an empire of liberty, and basically creating a world government based, basically expanding the United States of America to the United States of the world. And there was a letter I can't find. It was a primary source letter from Jefferson to somebody where Jefferson talked about unifying the Americas, Latin America, South America, like a United States of Americas. And so it goes even before 1930s technocracy and technate. It goes back to the founding. This was some occult, Masonic, satanic project to create world government. Which is, anyways, we've covered a lot. Syria, I don't know if you had any last comment on that.
Just,
Monica.
I'm never voting in a federal election again, national election, probably not even local, although I might have to try to save my town now. It is very clear to me that the empire does what it wants. It invaded Syria. It does not represent me. I'm never saying the word us again. The US, England, whatever. I live here. I was until, a few days ago, so grateful to have, like a nice house, warm bed to live inside the empire's, kind of basic, unit, but I am going to never stop publicly objecting, because if I'm ever face to face with St. Peter, I'm like, they took my money, they did it in my name, but I am absolutely, it is the empire. They're invading countries, they're destroying sovereignty, killing people, bombing. It's never going to stop, and I am not a part of it.
Yeah, I echo what you said. And I think that maybe as these things get closer to home, like it has with you put it out beautifully tonight, how it's affected somebody that's actually right here. I think maybe when that starts to happen more, there is that window of opportunity for people to really reflect on what's happening and where they should apply their time and energy. And that's my hope, is that people do that. Otherwise, like you, I see changes happening right here at home. That's the way forward in this. I'm not looking for a hero. I don't think there's going to be a hero, but I do think there will be heroic people like your neighbor, and that's what inspires me. People like that.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap up. Maybe later this month if we have time. If not next, we're gonna do a live Q&A with paid subscribers, so people can sign up to any one of our paywalls or to all of our paywalls.
I got a Substack now.
The Substacks, and then they can access. We do a call where all three of us join with any of our supporters. The audio gets recorded, so anyone who misses the call can join that. And so, all right, I'm signing off. Hrvoje, Geopolitics and Empire.
Monica Perez. Until next time.
Parallel Mike of the Parallel Systems broadcast. Cheers, guys.